Hopefully that's not too loud for you guys. All right. So, here we are. Welcome to Puerto Rico. You didn't know we could get here so fast. It was not that fast for us. 5 a.m. flight. But once you got there, we flew into Aguadilla. I'll show you the next one, which is on the west coast. For some reason, it was cheaper to fly in other than San Juan, but Puerto Rico is about the size of Connecticut. So you can get pretty much anywhere in a minimal amount of time if you take the right highway. If you go through the middle where it's all mountains, it's going to take forever. But we flew into Aguadilla on the west coast, and 5 minutes behind the airport, there's a beach. It's not really a swimming beach, but we just put on our swimsuits and said, let's go to the beach right now. Let's do it. So actually, in terms of the hurricane, the west coast and the north coast really got hit the worst. Crash Boat Beach used to be a really huge tourist destination. It was like an outdoor party all the time. People brought like brightly colored boats up to the docks. There were vendors on the beach. There were bathrooms and, music and dancing. And now it's, there's no boats. Now, even in January, there used to be boats because it was a big tourist month. We drove there just to see it because it was on the list of places to see. And after we paid for the parking, we walked down the beach and find out there's no bathrooms anymore. So we went back to the gas station and came back in again. And she said, okay, you don't pay again. I was like, yeah, I don't want to. But we just went to see and we walked along the beach. Surfers Beach is the one right behind the airport. We're a lot of surfers. The North Shore and the West Coast are rough, very rough swimming. I've been swimming my whole life, and I almost drowned in like 5 minutes. It is a strong undertow. And like it was at Crash Boat Beach, that was a bathroom. But who owns the public beaches? Who's going to pay to rebuild it? Who's going to take responsibility for putting in a bathroom? People are busy rebuilding their houses, their properties. Who's taking ownership of this? The funny thing about Puerto Rico is that they are America, but they're not America. So they consider themselves Americans, but they don't always get the same treatment as all the states. Luckily, after the hurricane, FEMA paved all the roads, so the roads were beautiful when we were there. This is another West Coast beach, Sandy Beach. Now, if you go to the resorts, which we don't do, they have nice beaches. They have, special rocks put in the water so that you don't get the scary undertow and, feel like you're drowning. But I'm not going to pay to go see something that's right there that nature made. So we went down to the beach. We got wet, got dunked. I said, let's go. Let's keep driving. And that was another beach along the way. And now there were resorts down this side too. But we went to the public beaches and then drove down to see the lighthouse. They have a lot of lighthouses. They're an island. But this is one of the older ones that was listed as something to go see. And it was such a clear day, we could actually see this tiny little that's off the coast. I like the perspective shots. We drove down south towards Mayaguez. We stopped at a restaurant and had this beautiful view while we were eating. Now, the restaurant itself was fine and opened up on top, but you can see in the corner here, this used to be a second deck. They used to have a patio floor. They used to have a banquet hall down there, and that has not been repaired. They really were only the top floor of the restaurant. Further down that west coast, you have more beaches down there. This is Combate Beach, which is on Cabo Rojo. It's kind of like the Florida of Puerto Rico is how I describe it, because it is the southernmost tip of the island. And you can just go out to the edge of this cliff and you just see water. There's nothing else, and the wind is crazy blowing around, and it's really beautiful and just wild. So this is a playa, little beach at Cabo Rojo, and actually this was beautiful swimming because it was kind of on the inside of that little peninsula sticking out. So when you stood on the cliff, you could look down and see the beach, and we walked down there after and went swimming. This is from the top of the cliff. And there's the lighthouse at Cabo Rojo. We've got the central area. Gozlandia is a hiking area, and Toro Negro and Toro Verde are the mountains. Beautiful mountains, and they're not that far away. 2-hour drive. You could drive from end to end in 6 hours if you take the highway all the way around. If you go through the middle, you're going up tiny little narrow roads, coming down. At one point, we couldn't see where we were going down to. And that was a little scary, but the road was there. We made it. Some more distant mountains, and the weather was just gorgeous. The sky was beautiful, even when it was cloudy.
What time of year?
We went in January. Oh my God, surround sound, I love it. We were there January 11th to 20-something. We were there 2 weeks. 25th. You came back 21st, I came back 25th, yeah. So we were there for 2 full weeks, my girlfriend and I, and he had to come back early and go to work, so. Later there's some only pictures. This was just a beautiful sunset, and I just love, oh, I hit the microphone, sorry. I love that palm tree sticking out, just to remind you that it's tropical. This is the Lago de Dos Bocas, the lake with 2 mouths in the middle of the mountains. And they have these white mountains out here, which is interesting compared to the red cliffs you saw in Cabo Rojo. Rojo means red in Spanish, so that's redhead for the cliffs down there. And there's some more white mountains in the middle. Gozlandia is a hiking area with some waterfalls. You can swim in them. You can just watch the people swim and climb in them if you don't want to, and that's okay. And this is one of the waterfalls that led down to one of the swimming pools, and then there was another pool further down, so you could climb up to the higher level if you wanted to. And the water, almost everywhere, the water had its own special color. So this one was a different kind of greenish blue. And if you've ever heard about those pedicures where the fish nibble at you, a lot of older ladies sitting there with their feet in the water, and when you stand in there, you feel it. Now, some people got scared and were screaming, "They're biting me, oh my God." It doesn't really hurt. I don't particularly care for it. I don't care for the nibbling. But the water was beautiful. It was freezing cold, and we climbed up on the rocks, and people were jumping in. So I had to pose for a picture to prove I climbed the waterfall. And there's one of the other swimming holes. So actually in the middle there is where I was in that other photo. And other people were climbing up much higher, but no. We went to the window cave, Cueva La Ventana, and they give you a hard hat so you don't get hurt. It's okay. This one's a bit of a hiker. You go up through a couple rocky formations and then climb down into the cave so that you could get through to the window and look down into the valley. So if you don't plan to do it, you can still see the view. And it really was incredible just to stand there and look down. And of course, this was ancient Indian caves, and what they used to do was have a watchman sit here. You see the river. So if any other tribes were coming down the river towards their camp, they knew about it. No one could sneak downriver on them, not sneak up on them, but. And they did have a little indigenous culture museum that we found just out of the way in the middle of the mountains. And they had all different artifacts they had dug up from this region. Nobody lives in this region now, and it took them a long time to find these things. And they still aren't really sure why the tribes picked up and moved away from this area. They think it might have been flooding, because everything was so perfectly preserved, it doesn't seem like there was a war or anything like that. They even found perfectly preserved remains buried with their idols up in the corner there. And these were special burials that they had in a certain area that they found. We've got the North Shore, where the Atlantic Ocean is. Rough waters again, be careful. And this is, so public areas, not always in the most beautiful condition. A lot of the houses, museums, fine. But almost everywhere there was devastation, someone paints the flag of Puerto Rico. We saw it everywhere. So a lot of people left the island. If they could afford to leave, if they didn't originally come from there, a lot of people just left. But just like with the Boston bombing, when Boston Strong came out, they have No me quito Puerto Rico. I'm not leaving. I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. And they also have Se levanta, rise up. We will rise up. So they paint the flag everywhere. They have twice the pride that they used to have because now they're recovering and they can show their strength again. This is the Oaxaca Tunnel. It's really just an old tunnel. No one seems to know why it's there, but when you walk through it, you come out and see a beautiful sunset on the other side. So it's a nice little place just to go see. It was on the list of free things to do. I do a lot of free things, inexpensive things, and sometimes just walking around an area is enough. I also like the cheap walking tours. Airbnb and TripAdvisor do a lot of $20 to $40 walking tours, 2 hours. They take you around the whole city. That's enough for me to figure out where everything is. And then we can go back and see whatever we want later. Here's another flag on the North Shore, just on some old debris they found on the beach. And here's some of those rocky waves. They were beautiful to look at, but scary to wade in. And this is in Arecibo. They have a lighthouse and historical park. It was honestly the most expensive place we saw on the whole island. We didn't go in. They wanted $15 a person. And I said, but I can see the lighthouse from here. And but you can go in the museum. I said, that's okay. Everywhere else was $5, $10 for a tour. Things we booked online were maybe $20 to $40 a person, except for, sailing trips to an island and back. But $15 a person to look at a lighthouse that I can see from right here was a little much. But they did have this beautiful sign, so I took a nice picture of that. That just looks like a postcard in and of itself. And it was only $5 to go hike up the Cueva del Indio, the Indian's Cave. And what the owner of the lot that leads to the cave is the guy who charges you the $5. But he said that they filmed a lot of the scenes from Pirates of the Caribbean in Puerto Rico, and especially in this cove, just because of the unique formations they have in the rock there. So this is looking down from one of the edges. And this is standing further out, so you can see that other little cutout there. Now, I have not watched the Pirates of the Caribbean again to see if that is true, but feel free. Check it out. Let me know. And this was a girls-only trip. Mike had gone home already. You can tell it's the end because I was so tan. And that's my friend Houston with me. And this is another North Shore beach picture. It was always beautiful. But there's a lot of rocks along the shore there. But Playa Hobos was one of the few beaches on the North Shore that was really comfortable to swim in. It did have large jetties on the side. And another hint was that there was 5-year-olds learning to surf. So I said, okay, if they're teaching children surfing lessons here, I think we'll be okay. And it was pretty safe. All right, I've got a little video about the Northwest and Central Shores. love that Google photo. I love the live photos that they move. It really feels like an old home movie. I just love that. Sorry. There's two more later on. All right, here's San Juan. A lot of people just fly right into San Juan, and that's all they see. But there's so much more to see. Party person, go to San Juan. There's always a party going on, and the weekend we happened to be there was also the weekend of the San Sebastian Festival. And there was so many people. The streets were blocked off. Taxis can't get through. Ubers can't get through. Of course, we have a rental car, so we park it miles away and try to Uber as far as we can. But it was wild, a lot of people. But everyone was so happy because everything's getting better. And I'm sure before the hurricane, there was 3 times as many people. So I think they were all just happy to see how many were there and see that other people are sticking with it. So this is Old San Juan. You guys all have heard about the bright colors, buildings, and they have this great Camina Paraguas, walk of the umbrellas, and I've seen this in Paris also. This is like a thing places are doing, and it does promote tourism, and of course there's 100 people there taking photos with the umbrellas behind them, which we did too. But it was very beautiful, and this is the walk leading up to the governor's residence. Of course, we had to visit a church, and it was interesting. This that we went through this church, and while they're having a service inside, there was also protesters outside for women's rights. So that was really interesting too, because you generally think of Puerto Rico as a very traditional, very Catholic type of place, and they really are. There's a revolution going on, but they were both respectful and not going away at the same time. But it was also a big festival weekend, so they had a lot of people. Here's the inside of the church, very, very beautifully decorated. They also had some certain parts of saints in special display cases. I did not take pictures of that for you, I'm sorry. But they did have pigeon apartments built into the back wall of the city, which I really liked. And there's a park where you need an umbrella because there's a lot of pigeons. You want to be under the tarp, but they come under there too. And there was a band playing, and I wondered if they, coat their instruments with something special so that they don't have to wash it too badly later. But yeah, they have these pigeon apartments that people built years ago, and people come and feed the pigeons at the pigeon park. It was a lot of fun. Of course, because of the festival, there was people there, and the band, and food, and music, and this is looking off the wall across the bay. And we walked all the way up the lawn to the Castillo de Moro. This fort's been there a very long time. There's 2 forts in San Juan, actually. There's Castillo Moro and Castillo San Cristobal, which is a little more modern. And this is the long walk up the lawn that we took to get there, and that's San Juan behind us. San Juan is really, kind of reminds you of San Francisco. It's on a hill, and it just goes up. You walk from the bottom up, and when you're at the top, you're at the castle. And so the walking tours take you up, and they say it's up to you if you want to stay up here, if you want to go back down and then go up again. Most of us choose to stay at the top, explore the top, and then kind of slowly go back down. Here's the top of the castle. And this is actually looking out the window from San Cristobal, because this is further into the city. And it's actually, you can see the bay over the city from here. Then we went across the bay. We took a ferry. It took 7 minutes. I couldn't believe it. It took a half hour to get on the ferry, but the actual ferry ride took 7 minutes and cost $2. That was pretty great because we were already late for our appointment at Bacardi. So this is from the rooftop at Bacardi, looking back across the bay at San Juan, ending in Castillo Moro at the end there. And here's sunset at the Casa Bacardi, where they gave us lots of rum. This was just one person's tasting, and no one finished theirs except for me. And then we took it, they gave you a Bacardi cup, as you see, and they said, go ahead, make a mixture, pour it in the cup, and take it to go. And we did. And I turned my back for 1 second, and Houston was drunk. And I said, what happened to all the rum? They said, we don't know. Houston took it. It was gone. She later asked me, how did we get home that night? I said, we walked to the car. Did I walk? Yes, you did. I didn't carry you. That was fake. Don't worry. That was the leftover rum. Oh, another thing I meant to mention before is that normally you would pay to get into the castle. I'm not sure if it was because of the festival. This was during the government shutdown that we went on vacation. And that's part of the interesting part where Puerto Rico's America, but it's not America because almost everything was open. Only one park where they had animals near Cabo Rojo was closed, and we saw someone going in. We said, why are you closed? She said, because of the government shutdown. Everywhere else, they said, come on in, it's free today. We're getting paid. I mean, if you work at the castle, it's a national park. That whole area is a national park. But it was all, I mean, there was the San Sebastian Festival. Maybe Saint Sebastian has seniority over the government shutting them down, but everyone was everywhere, and there was only one place where they said, nope, the government shut down, we can't open, but I had to go feed the animals. And everywhere else, come on in, it's free today. So I was very nervous because, of course, you buy the tickets in advance, and I'm watching it every day going, is this going to ruin our vacation? Because we also went to El Yunque, a national forest, and a lot of these places are national affiliated places, so it was kind of iffy, but if the local government's not going to enforce it, there's a lot of tourists there, and that's how they make their money, that's how they make their living. How can you shut it down and tell everyone go away, especially people coming in for the festival? It was great for us and good for the tourism. We actually stayed in the South most of the time. We moved around. We had Airbnbs all over the island. That's where it's definitely America. No $2 a night like Costa Rica. Pretty much the cheapest place we found per night was maybe $60, $70. And that was for 3 people. But yeah, that's not the same as when we look at other places. You can get a lot cheaper. In the Dominican Republic, we're looking at something for $35 a night for 3 people. And St. Lucia, they have places for $20 a night, but the flight's $600. So we had to compromise. But my aunt lives in Coamo. She's my mother's good friend who I grew up with. I'm not actually Puerto Rican, but if I tan enough and I practice my Spanish, I think I can. Coamo's not really a big city, but it is where we stayed, and there are hot springs there. So, not very celebrated, not easy to find, but very peaceful and quiet when you're there. Not a lot of tourists. And Ponce is really the big city down there. That's a big deal. That's where the art museum is. That's where they had the walking tours. That's where a lot of the trips to islands leave out of. And that's where they have a big boardwalk area. So this is my aunt's house in Coamo. They have a giant bedroom, 2 bathrooms, 2 guest rooms, a living room, 2-car garage, $600 a month. Sounds good, right? They don't have internet because they do not choose to pay for someone to come install it for them. And I believe that a little further up the mountain they don't have electricity. But everyone now has a water cistern on top of their roof. And they can just go unplug outside and plug it into the other one just in case. And all the new houses being built are all being adapted this way. For, silly to say there won't be another hurricane. There will. So they're getting much better prepared. This is just a pretty flower picture. This was at the hot springs. They have a lot of nice greenery there. And this is the Plaza Las Delicias in Ponce, which is the Plaza of the Delicacies. Basically, where the governor, the mayor used to live, that's where all the good stuff went. So anything that came into town, the best of the best, always went straight to the head of the town, and everyone would come to the plaza to see what was happening. Here we are in front of the fountain, enjoying the sun, and then you see lions on the fountain. You see a lot of lions in Ponce. That is their thing, the Ponce lion. Their other thing that they talk about all the time, their big claim to fame, is the story about the firemen and the firemen who saved the town. Years ago, there was a big fire. At the time, I believe the U.S. government was in charge of Puerto Rico, and they did not have cars. They just had firemen with buckets, and the military told the townspeople, just flee, go, and ordered them to all evacuate the town. And the firemen disobeyed and got their bucket and got their horse and buggy and went and started putting out the fire. Well, they had to go all the way down and around to avoid the military, but in the end they saved the town. So this is their claim to fame. This is their Boston Marathon. They have the story of the firemen who defied authority and saved the whole town. So they do have a museum. The Parque de Bombas Bomberas are firefighters. And they, can you tell, red and black? Actually, they built this building for like a World Fair type of event. And then after the building had been used, they said, what do we do to it? Everyone said, build a museum for the firemen, our favorite story. So they have an old buggy in there, and they have pictures of the families of the firemen. They also have up on the hill a giant cross called the Cruceta de Vigía, the lookout cross. And back in the day, someone would live up on this hill, just like the Window Cave. Someone was up on the hill looking out into the ocean and letting them know who was coming into port. And they had a pole, and they would raise the flag of whatever ship was coming to port, and people knew, are we running? Are we bringing our goods to sell? Are we bringing our money to buy stuff? What's going on? So now they have a giant cross up there, not as big as Rio de Janeiro, but you can climb up. This is a picture looking back down from there, and you can see the flags flying in the lower corner. That's the original cross where he hung the flags, and there's a nice little Zen garden behind there for some reason. And nearby is also the Castle Serrayes. The Serrayes family lived there years ago, and I believe somebody still owns this property. They have a museum, and they are the makers of Don Q, which is a famous Puerto Rican rum. It's based off of Don Quixote, so they have like a little soldier with his spear, but It's a pretty popular drink. They have the museum there. They have lots of weddings here. Half of their historical video was trying to sell you the wedding venue. And they said, and look at our beautiful plaza, and look at our pools, and look at the lawn. And I'm just thinking, well, what about the people who used to live here? Where's the history? But it was beautiful. I mean, this is the view. And this is looking out over all of Ponce. Now, if you look very closely, yeah, you can see a couple roofs that are damaged, maybe some things that aren't freshly painted. But if you don't look too closely, does that look any different than any other city? It doesn't look devastated. You know, they've rebuilt what they can and what they had to as quickly as possible. The main problem is so many people left that the job situation is unstable. There's too many of this kind of worker, not enough of this kind of worker, and from what my aunt tells me, that it's very American in the way that no one wants to farm, no one wants to work the land, no one wants to do manual labor. All the kids want to make money and get out. But if there's no one working the land, they don't grow food. Everything's imported. They don't have enough farms. It makes things really expensive, because to them farming is a peasant job, and now that they're all Americans, they don't want to be peasants and they don't want to farm. Well, my uncle's a farmer. He makes more money than my parents do, if you do it right. They also have their art museum there, Museum Ponce, and they have all different types of artwork there, a lot of religious artwork. They are very Catholic, a lot of Mother Mary's, baby Jesus, a lot of people on the cross. I love the gold leaf triptychs that they do, so they had a lot of those. Now, this is the second location of the museum, actually, because it used to be in the middle of the town. Now it's town, and it's much larger and has much better security. Back when it was just local artists, they weren't so worried about it. Years later, someone donated their most famous painting, Flaming June, which I have a picture of, which is worth quite a bit just on its own. It was worth more than the original museum. And the guy donating it said, I will donate this to you if you come and make a new facility that is very secure and worthy of having this type of artwork, this level. So I took a couple pictures of some glass work. I took 1,000 pictures at the museum, but we don't have time for everything. In my normal travel lectures, I can spend an hour on each day, on each place we went, if I really dig into it. And this is the Flaming picture. You might have seen it before. Sir Frederick Leighton is the painter. Because of the lighting there, if you stand right in front of it, you can't see anything. I had to mess with this for a while so you could see the photo. And here's one of these beautiful gold leaf religious paintings. Now, at the edge of the water, we have La Guancha. This is also in Ponce. Ponce's got a lot. If you're on the South Shore, that's where you go. Now, this is behind the city, out on the water, and as you can see, if you look closely, there's another photo, you can see it better. The actual edge of the boardwalk was so badly damaged and has not yet been repaired yet. So there is a fence that you can see that stops people from walking on the old part of the boardwalk. They do have the part that's on cement, on land, but it doesn't really extend out, especially not as far as it used to. But this is the area to go at night. And they have vendors, they have music, there's restaurants up and down, and they also have this little tower and a little pier that goes around the side where the biggest attraction is feeding the fish. And they're very hungry. They're huge. You walk around the corner and the water's moving. And you say, what is that? And they say, oh, we're going to go feed the fish. Everybody comes to La Guancha to feed the fish. Okay. Well, you buy smaller fish to feed the fish. And these fish are so big. And there's pelicans everywhere trying to steal the little fish from you. And Houston decided to feed the pelican, and it almost took her finger with it. Luckily, they don't have teeth. Just kind of clapped on her a couple times, but there's people buying little stinky fish and throwing them over for the big fish to eat. So that's something that Aunt's husband said they used to do when he was a kid. So luckily, shore wasn't hit so badly that it destroyed that ecosystem. Some of the other places we went, they said, oh, this was the first year we could do this again. Especially the bio bays. I have no pictures of the bioluminescent bays because if there's any light, you can't see that the water's lighting up. But they have 3 bioluminescent bays in Puerto Rico, and I think there's like 5 in the world. So one was near the South Shore in between Ponce and Cabo Rojo at La Parquera, and we took a boat out and they showed us the water. They had a swimmer jump in, and where he was arms, the water's lighting up. And it's a type of plankton in the water that when it's excited and agitated, it gives off this bioluminescent light. Took a tour off of Fajardo and did a kayaking tour through the bioluminescent water. Back in the day, they used to let you swim, and everyone could jump in and take a swim and see it, but it took 2 years for these plankton to come back after the hurricane. The areas were so badly damaged, the seafloor was all dredged up. Some of the beaches, they told us, you know, you can see through the water here. At one of the beaches, they said this water used to be crystal clear, and now it's always murky ever since the hurricane. Might clear again, depends which shore gets the hurricane next time. But it was great that these fish are still there. The same fish my uncle has been going to see since he was a kid. But the bioluminescent plankton are just now, so they say you can't swim anymore. They let you put your hand in for a little bit. What they do is pull in a bucket of water, and then everyone can splash in that instead of having everyone touch the actual water, because they say the oils from our skin, and especially from the suntan lotion or the sunscreen, it really is bad for them. Here you can see the boardwalk that's really boarded off, and so it used to extend much further out into the water, but it's not stable, and once they had their restaurants up and running, who's going to pay to extend the boardwalk? Now here's a big showstopper for you. The Guanica Dry Forest. This showed up on every list of things to go see. This is it. You drive through several patches of this, and this is the amazing Guanica Dry Forest. It's interesting because nothing happened here that they know of to make these little dry desert patches where there's cactus growing. We didn't see cactus anywhere else in Puerto Rico. But all of a sudden, you've got a little Arizona in the middle of Puerto Rico. But when I said, oh, we're going to drive over to the Guanica Dry Forest, my aunt said, no, don't waste your time. But if you're on your way to the beach, Playa Guanica, you just stop and take a picture. I said, somebody take a picture because I'm going to do a drum roll before I show that. But the beach was gorgeous. And this is a naturally protected area, and actually, we weren't there long because there was bees, which they were celebrating because the bees also were very close to dying out there after these storms. But we're both allergic, so can we go to a different beach? I'm glad the bees are doing well, but we're not coexisting so great, so let's get out of here. And of course, I wore flower dresses everywhere, and they were following me. But don't kill a bee in Puerto Rico, please. Not that they're farming, but if they ever decide to, they will need them. So we went here just on our way to one of the best beaches in the South Shore, according to my aunt and uncle who've tried them all, Playa Santa. This is the one that used to have perfectly clear water, but this is like a bath. very gentle waves, very warm water. You've got restaurants, there's parking, no fee to get in, a long, beautiful, almost white sand beach. There's a bunch of restaurants and hotels and things behind us there. And then we have the East Coast. So, Cayo Icacos is over here. You can't really see it, it's too small. Culebra is over here, that's larger, but we took a little trip out to Icacos and went snorkeling. El Yunque is one of the other national parks there. It's a forest, and luckily we got in. One area was closed, I think maybe because of damage from the hurricane. I think they just don't want you climbing because a lot of it's climbing, and there's no one there to supervise. And Fajardo is where the other bioluminescent bay is. We took a kayaking trip out of there. This is a view of the shore, the East Coast, from the tower in El Yunque. And here's a look back at the mountains. This is one of their pools called Baño Grande. Baño can be bath, not just bathroom. I know everyone says, where's the bathroom? You know, baño, baño. That's not what they mean. They mean like bathtub, big bathtub. Here's one of the little waterfalls we're in. See, there's people down there swimming. At first, we didn't know. By the time we got to Gozlandia, we knew you could swim in those waterfalls, but we didn't know here that what you saw from the road wasn't all of it. And we saw people climbing up the side. I said, you're not going alone. We all have to go up there then. So we're climbing up. There's no steps. There is no actual way to get up there besides gripping rocks and climbing. And at one point, people were walking up a tree branch, and I didn't feel comfortable just getting up and walking up the tree branch, so I sat on it and scooted up as best I could because I wasn't going to be left behind. But we got to the top and we waited. It was beautiful. This is from our trip out to Cayo Icacos from Fajardo. We took a little catamaran sailing trip, snorkeling included, open bar at 9 in the morning. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. We waited till after lunch, really, because I wasn't letting anyone get dehydrated and fall off the side. This is from our ride there, and you'll see as we get further out, the color of the water changed by the time we got to the island. And it was just so beautiful. Sometimes I just look at these pictures and I go, was I really there? Was that real? And this was looking down from the boat, just perfectly clear water. After we got back, we were telling people about the trip, and that means the reefs are well enough that they're taking trips out there again. I won't say we saw a multitude of fish. We saw a good amount, but it wasn't like when you watch the National Geographic Channel, Australia on the Great Barrier Reef. But we saw a couple fish. I had my underwater camera, and the reef formations are okay. There's still stuff growing. It's a little bit of the island. Well, there's not really anything on the island. It's owned by the government, and they tell you don't walk too far away from the shore. So we didn't. And that was my dinner. Anywhere I could get it. Fried red snapper. It was so good. And I am not someone who normally eats things with the head still on it or with the fins. Normally I want it taken apart for me, unless it's lobster. But this was so good. We were at this restaurant and she said, we're the house of the red snapper, the best one. I said, okay, I'll try it. And everywhere I go, I fried plantains. Now they have the mashed plantains that are not sweet, that they call tostones, and those are kind of more pale and squashed, and they taste almost like potato. But I like these fried. They're more ripe, like almost a fried banana. And in Costa Rica, they call them maduros, sweet ones. But in Puerto Rico, they call them amarillos, yellows, versus the other ones that are more green or tan. And that was really delicious. And there's my coconut mojito at the top. That was really good too. This is one of the places we stayed. This was one of the Airbnbs. This area is right on the shore. You can see this was our balcony. There's the ocean. About half of the apartments were empty. A lot of them for sale. We stayed there one night. I think it was $60, $70 for the night. After we got back, I said, boy, that was really great. Wouldn't it be so nice to have a house in Puerto Rico? And, you know, rent it out when we're not there. We were a couple bucks a night. And I looked up this area on Zillow, one of these websites, and the next condo place over, I think it sold maybe a month ago, $200,000. Literally right on the beach. And they have the, you know, a gate and a security guard. So you did feel pretty safe. And when we walked down to the beach, we could have walked for miles. Eventually I said, we better turn back or I'm not going to recognize the tree we came from, because at night you don't know. Leave something in the sand. I kept saying, is that the tree that was pointing? We had one tree that was really pointing out. I said, is that the tree? Is that the tree? Finally we found it. But I mean, I couldn't believe it. And I said, oh boy, if I had that money, I would buy that place in a second. It was really very comfortable, and the beach was right there. I couldn't believe it. And this is a sunset from that restaurant with my fried snapper, and you can see down here the entrance to one of these condo places, one of these developments. It really looks like that was painted, doesn't it, the sky? I don't know if it's because it's on I'm not used to seeing it on there instead of on a computer screen. And I got one more video for you guys, and then any questions, we can talk. I'm sure there's a million things I didn't tell you yet, but all right. I'll just put that back up so you don't start examining my desktop. Any questions? Any comments?
I heard about a large radar telescope.
In Arecibo.
Did you get to see that?
We didn't, but I kind of looked it up, and it's just a big disc. There's not like a museum or anything. It's literally just one of those big receivers. So I said, okay, you know, if we run out of things to do, it was on the list, and we drove by it a couple times, but it was always on the way to a waterfall or a cave. And, you know, if there's no one there to give me a tour, I was like, it's something to see. And it was on the list of free and inexpensive things to go see, but it took us a couple days to get to that window cave. We kept missing it. They closed at 5, and they wouldn't let you in at 4:50 because you have to hike so far. So we spent a couple days chasing certain things, and that just didn't end up making the list, but it was on my original list.
I didn't see tons of tourists in your pictures. Is that because season where there wasn't a lot of people?
Part of it is that we don't go to resorts. I tend to just do all my own research and find out what I think is interesting. We were the only people on the Ponce walking tour. She was literally just doing it for the three of us, but the walking tour through San Juan had about 30 people with it. So I think a lot of people tend to just gravitate towards San Juan. It's what they've heard of, it's what they know about. And that's where you saw a lot of people. I don't know how many were tourists because they were having this festival. So everyone's, got all their saint gear, and they had headbands that said Sanse, which is short for Sebastian. Because I'm looking at it going, Sanse, it sounded like Japanese to me at first. I'm like, and they're wearing like the headbands with the red writing, and I'm going, what is going on? And then she said, oh, San Sebastian, Sanse. I said, oh, okay. So I don't know how many in San Juan were tourists or were Puerto Ricans. Some of the places we were, there was tourists, especially like on the certain tours, but I try to get them out of my videos and photos, but you do see them going through once in a while. We met a couple groups, but it wasn't crazy.
How did you pick Puerto Rico, and how does it compare to, you mentioned you've been to Costa Rica, but like any other country that you've been?
Well, we did Mexico on a cruise, so it was really only in Mexico for like a day. Yeah, for one day we were in Cozumel and did a butterfly garden. We had a week in Costa Rica, and I basically did the same thing. We picked a direction one day and drove that way and saw everything we could. But it was a little cheaper for the flight to get to Puerto Rico. Once you added all the bags and stuff, it was almost the same. Spirit's one of the only people going there right now. And they have their bare airfare, and then you have to pay even for a carry-on. So if you can fit everything in your backpack and say it's your personal item, that's the best bet. People had backpacks the size of other people. And they're like trying to shove it in, and they're saying it's not a carry-on. I'm like, I don't know about this. But that's one of the best ways to get there, but it says 200 round trip. Not by the time you add your bags, $50 both ways. And if you want to select your seats because you want to sit with everybody, you pay extra for that. So they add on all these fees if you literally are going by yourself and don't care, and you can just wear what you're wearing or buy something, go for 200. So it was a cheaper destination, probably because a lot of people are afraid after the hurricanes, which is interesting because my mother has friends who vacation in St. Thomas and St. Martin, and their timeshare said don't even bother coming. But the flights there were cheap too. But my mom had been all of these places and said, you're going to walk around St. Thomas in a day. She said, you can do Puerto Rico in 2 weeks and you'll be satisfied. But St. Thomas and St. Martin are not 2-week destinations in her opinion.
Vacations can be like a sampler. You try a little of this, little of that, and so next time you know what to do if you were to go back. So.
And everybody says, would I go back? I would love to go back everywhere, but then I don't go somewhere new.
But if you did go back, where would you spend more time?
I think I would explore more of the southern East Coast because really nothing showed up on the radar there. So we didn't really drive through there much. The highway took you north to go south back to where we were going. So there's that whole other area down there where, according to my aunt and uncle, they said there's not really any good beaches there. I said, what's over there? They said, not much. So I would probably go explore some of the areas we didn't make it to. There was the other caverns at Camoy are closed and have been closed since the hurricane. I don't know if those will ever open again. I would like to go back and see that. The Marquesa Ecological Park was closed since the hurricane, and we couldn't get in there. And then the other one with the wild animals down near Cabo Rojo was closed. So those three I missed, and I would definitely see those again. But I would probably spend more time just exploring and walking around the town. I was so busy trying to see everything.
Right.
I do soak up a lot, And I have a good memory, so I can almost recite the tourist speech once we're done with the tour. But I'd probably just spend more time really getting to know the people more rather than zipping around the way we did, because for me 2 weeks wasn't enough.
Where's your next destination?
The next big one's Dominican Republic.
Oh, that's right, you said that.
Yeah, so we're doing that next January. I'm interning, so I can't really take big vacations for 9 months. So I said, okay, I'll be free in January. Let's go somewhere warm again. So now we've done, my girlfriend and I, Houston, we did Cuba already. Then we did Costa Rica. Then we took a break from Spanish and went to Amsterdam. And then we went back to Puerto Rico. So Dominican Republic's the next big one. After that, who knows? We were planning on Brazil, and then a bunch of crazy stuff happened there. Then we were planning on Trinidad, and that wasn't going to work out anymore. So now we have Dominican Republic. The tickets are bought. So everyone's texting me, telling me that Big Papi got hurt and that I shouldn't go, but I don't have anywhere near the amount of money he has. I don't think anyone's going to try to rob us staying in $40 Airbnbs. But they all always have good security.
What kind of wildlife did you see? You had mentioned the bioluminescent plankton and showed some fish. Did you see much else? I know you said
Iguanas. A lot of iguanas. There in the video there was a little baby iguana, and you saw his little thing come out. But really, like in Costa Rica, we saw monkeys and stuff like that, and the sloths. And parrots out in the wild. But we saw a lot of birds. A lot of pelicans. A lot of pelicans and seagulls, because so much of it's on the shore. Not as much rainforest as there was in Costa Rica. And the forest that we drove through, they don't, Toro Negro and Toro Verde, we were driving through, like you're just driving and you think it's just a country road, and there's still houses because they're the mountain and the surrounding area, but it's not a national park. There's nowhere you park and go for a hike. You just kind of drive these little windy roads through the mountain, and then you come back down and you look at your GPS and go, okay, I guess that was Toro Verde, was that mountain. We spent an hour going up and then back down. I mean, you see some great views, but there's never a sign telling you this is where you are right now. So that was kind of interesting. The forest a little more, but each time it was getting dark and you don't know where the next gas station is, so I would get nervous and say, can we turn around? We didn't. Me trying to get those two to dance. Now, after the rum tasting, and actually, even better, after the Bacardi tasting, we had scheduled a moonshine tasting. That will get you dancing. In Puerto Rico, they make pitoro, which is moonshine. And they soak it with cherries and pineapple and coconut, and they soak it in the fruit. What they usually do, they take like grain alcohol, put it in a coconut, and bury it for 9 months.
I have a recipe for that.
Yep.
I haven't tried it yet.
It's so good, it will mess you up. They were all dancing. That was the night she said, did I walk? And I've got some incriminating videos of everyone else as well. But yeah, it was good. It was good. But yeah, the Pitoro tasting right after the rum tasting maybe wasn't the best idea. But we didn't plan for them to be so close together. Because of that festival, we ended up doing everything an hour later than we meant to. But pretty much everywhere we called, we said, look, we're going to be late. We can't drive anywhere. We're walking through the streets. We're taking the ferry across the bay because there's no other way to get there. And everyone was pretty cool with it. So it was very laid back. No one said, oh, you're late, you can't go in. Except for at the window cave because it was such a far hike. Everywhere else, oh, come on in. Oh, it's free. Oh, okay, great. I like that. It's free.
Your Spanish is pretty good, or at least it seems to me, because I speak no Spanish.
Yeah.
Do you need Spanish?
It depends where you go. If you're out in the country, they might not know English. In the city, a lot of people speak English, but it can't hurt. It can't hurt. I took Spanish for at least 7 years in school. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. You know, my aunt is like my mother's friend. I heard some of it as a child, but, you know, really it was classes in school. But I happen to have an aptitude for languages. I learned a little bit of Dutch when we were in Amsterdam. Of course, the app on your phone teaches you to say, no, I'm not an apple. No, I'm not a banana. That book is good. Things you don't really need to say. But I'm pretty good with vocabulary in Spanish, and reading it is very easy for me because you say every single letter. Whereas French, I'm not so good at. A lot of X's, I don't know what they mean, S's on the end of everything, you never say them, but Spanish was okay. The one thing I thought was funny is there's stop signs in Puerto Rico say stop, pare, in Spanish. In Costa Rica, they said alto, which means tall. So, I mean, really, even knowing Spanish can't help you if you're in a different region, because of course at school they teach you Spain Spanish, proper Spanish. But, you know, alto, what do you mean tall? It's shaped like a stop sign, but it said tall, and no one stopped. So how was I to know what was really going on? But yeah, certain things, just like even the plantains in Costa Rica are maduros, sweet ones, and in Puerto Rico, they call them amarillos, the yellow ones. So just certain things, even if you don't know the area, it's still not going to help you if someone's speaking in like a slang. But it didn't hurt, and sometimes just trying, I found, makes a big difference. With languages I'm very not comfortable with, just saying hello or, you know, one word can really open people up to see that you're trying. And even if you say, you know, hola, soy americano, at least it shows you're trying, where some people come in and go, doesn't anyone speak English? It's like, oh, sure, we're all rushing to help you now. But if someone comes in and says, you know, please help me, I don't know Spanish, I'm trying, you know, they'll see that you're trying, and they really were, everyone was so sweet to us wherever we went, and in Costa Rica too. A couple times we really were in situations where you said, was this a good idea? This could go very badly if these are not nice people. And every time it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience, and who's to say if it was just the right people or that we had the right attitude? You can't really tell. Well, it's after 8. If you guys have places to be, please flee. I do have postcards, a calendar, and some things that I've made up front here. I do sell them. If you're interested, you can just come look. That's totally cool too. And I have business cards if you know anywhere else that would like a travel lecture. You can always give me a call or an email. But I hope you guys go to Puerto Rico.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.